Hello listeners everywhere. Welcome to the Archive of Audio Antiquities, a voyage into the vault of wonders on the wireless. In a moment, Simon Exton and Ken Moss will be here to speak to you.
Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to the Archive of Audio Antiquities. I'm Ken Moss.
I'm Simon Exton.
And we are joined this time, we've got guests. We are joined by Mark Rawlins and Joe Ford from the Finnish Big Podcast. Hello boys, welcome aboard.
Oh. Hello. We're like, sort of in the tiers of celebrities. We're like, what's below Z-list? We're like somewhere around there.
We're podcasters, we're all below Z, whatever the letter is. Well, this time, and it is my fault, I have requested that we all listen to the Doctor Who story, The Sirens of Time, Redux. Gallifrey is in a state of crisis, facing destruction at the hands of an overwhelming enemy, and the Doctor is involved in 3 different incarnations, each caught up in a deadly adventure. Scattered across time and space, the web of time is threatened, and someone wants the Doctor dead. The 3 incarnations of the Doctor must join together and set time back on the right track, but in doing so, will they unleash a still greater threat?
The Council of the Time Lords.
The Time Lords?
The High Council of the Time Lords commands you.
Now surrender, Doctors! Surrender!
Hello, listen to me. We are here by accident, but perhaps...
There has to be another way. Don't you see what you're doing is evil?
I didn't see you there.
Evidently. Where did you spring from?
And just who the hell are you, for that matter?
Time Lords.
Your president is dead, Time Lord.
All of space and time was yours for the taking.
You have accurately identified some of my defining traits.
And now all you will know for eternity is subjugation.
What a way to end a geology field trip. Dying of exposure.
We're far from dead yet, Helena.
Now what?
Control here. Report.
I seem to have forgotten the way again.
Sector 8 alert. Sector 8 alert.
Prepare to engage Vortex Drive.
I can't stop it.
Doctor, it's coming this way!
Let's get a move on, shall we?
Time distortion.
I trust you to fly me stark naked through a cheese grater.
The Time Lords really do want me dead.
There must be no witnesses.
Who are you?
Beware the Sirens of Time.
Big Finish, for the love of stories.
This was released in November 2024 to celebrate 25 years of Doctor Who at Big Finish. And I thought it'd be a jolly nice idea if we listened to it.
Yes, thank you for that.
Well, so did Nick Briggs. That's why he's and put it out again 25 years. Big Finish are so nostalgia-based now, they're nostalgic for their own work.
I can kind of forgive them this once because it's sort of a nice anniversary, and I know Sirens isn't universally... I absolutely love the Sirens of Time. I very much feel that I'm going to be on my own in the room for this podcast.
Yeah, you like a lot of shit, though.
To say the Sirens of Time is not universally loved is to say Hitler was a little bit naughty. Like, I feel as if you underplay how universally panned this story is.
The way I look at it is that I was wildly enthused when it landed on the doormat, and I can picture the very day that it arrived. It was a Saturday morning, and I was rough as toast. I'd got in from a night out with mates at 7:15, and I was at work at 7. So I got home from work at 2 o'clock. I had a huge 2-litre bottle of ice-cold limeade, and I sat on the settee and listened to all 4 episodes and loved it. I suspect my experience is slightly different. I'm going to start with our guest. Mark, how the hell did you come to Big Finish?
Well, yes, I remember getting the Sirens of Time in the post as well. very excited.
Was it a cassette or a CD?
No, I got the CD.
Oh,
I got the CD. Yes, yeah. And yeah, it was brand new Doctor Who. So of course I'm going to be excited. And I remember putting the CD in, playing that first episode, and being a little bit bored about halfway through. It didn't stop me playing it again and again and again. Because what else did we have? We had Slip Back before this. It didn't matter. I didn't enjoy it, but it was new Doctor Who. So I'm nostalgic for it, but I didn't enjoy it at the time. I don't think I ever understood what was going on.
I still don't understand what's going on 25 years later.
Yes.
Joe, what was your experience of this? Did you get it on CD or cassette or many years later?
I was a bit old-fashioned. I had the cassettes back in the day for the first 4 or 5, but I didn't get this one. My first Big Finish was Phantasmagoria, which was a very nice, atmospheric Peter Davison story set during the Victorian era. I thought, my God, they've captured Doctor Who perfectly. I'm on board. Had I listened to this, it may be where, Big Finish and our relationship had come to an end. So it wasn't really until I'd done a fair amount that I went back and found this one. And yeah, I've never really liked it, I'm afraid. But we will explain why.
Dr. Exton, I sort of know your story, but tell the boys and girls at home.
I got the first 4 or 5 of the Big Finishes as a package through the post, all bundled up from America, because I was writing to somebody over there who was desperately into a god-awful Australian thing called The Tribe. And I used to video all the episodes for him and send them over to him in America, and he would send me back the Big Finishes. And the first batch came as about 4 or 5. So Sirens of Time wasn't the first one that I listened to.
What was?
I can't remember. What's in that first 4?
Whispers of Terror.
Phantasmagoria. Land of the Dead.
Fearmonger. And Sirens of Time.
It may well have been Phantasmagoria. I'm pretty sure it wasn't Sirens of Time.
The only glimmer I will say here is that it was brand new Doctor Who and I lapped it up. And on the back of that, over the years, that was the catalyst for me spending thousands of pounds with Big Finish. So I will say that in its favour.
To try and find something better?
Well, this is where I suspect all the positivity ends, because I have loved Sirens for 25 years. I did not particularly like Sirens Redux.
Oh.
Joe, would you like to come in first and eviscerate the thing? Because I know you're going to do it.
Well,
here we go. Here we go.
Brace.
I am baffled they chose this story to celebrate, because it is a really terrible story bolted together from sort of tons of exposition, 0 character work, and 3 doctors that are kind of ill characterized, I'd say. But I get it. I get why they're doing it, because they're looking back at the first main range and saying, right, this is where we started and we're going to give it a fresh lick of paint. Trouble is, they haven't given it a fresh lick of paint. They've taken effectively a turd and rolled it out in smellier turd and then presented that as their 25th anniversary Big Finish release. I mean, it ain't no Silver Nemesis, is it? But I do want to say a few positives before I eviscerate the thing, as you say. I think all 3 of the Doctors give reasonably good performances in this. They're clearly all on board with coming back. I think the music in the original version was actually rather good, and I don't know what happened in the new version. It's quite terrible. Maggie Stables is in there playing this madly eccentric warthog character, which is super fun to listen to. The atmospherics during the sequence in the submarine are really good. But the trouble is you can present this stuff as well as you want. If it isn't there in the writing, you're not going to be engaged. And this is just a really terrible script. And it doesn't matter how many ways you restructure this appalling script, you cannot make this work. In fact, you can only really make it worse, because as 3 single episode stories, I get the structure. A 5th Doctor story, a 6th Doctor story, a 7th Doctor story, and then the 3 of them coming together to face the threat. That's a really interesting structural approach. The trouble is, it's 3 boring stories and then a boring culmination of those stories. And with this new version, instead of getting those boring stories over and done with in 25 minutes, we're now stuck listening to them for 3 episodes. And because of the way he structured this, he forgets the stories for like half an episode and you forget where you were. So before, it was a sort of tight little vignette an extremely tedious one. Now it's all over the shop. All the the ideal. Sorry, I'm going to shut up in a minute. The ideal structure of this is A, B, C. Yeah, if you're going to do it as 3 separate stories interlinked. Plot A, plot B, plot C. And if you keep doing that approach, then you know where you are with each of the stories. He don't do that. He does A, C, B, C, A, B, B. And it's all over the shop. So Colin comes in at the end of episode 1. Peter is almost completely forgotten for the entirety of episode 3. It's just a mess. I just was like, I know this story and I don't know where I am in this story. And that's just weird. So I just think the whole thing is a baffling approach to doing a Redux version of this. Anyway, I'll shut up now for a second.
Simon, go on. Fire.
Well, I listened to both of these in preparation for this. Thank you for that.
You know how much I love you.
I will find something special for you to watch next time I'm at Rishton Towers. And if I can't find anything special, it'll be the Corridor People all over again.
The other half of Artemis 81.
Well, no, because I've already seen that. I wasn't the one that ran away in terror. Anyway, away from telly stuff and back to this. I'm going to disagree with you, Joe. I think the Redux is better.
You think?
Yeah, because I think each of the individual single episode Doctor stories are okay in their own right. But one with a very similar other one and a very similar other one, all of which having female pseudo-companions that have almost the same name that we're not supposed to realise is the same person, is just tedious after the first one. And mixing it up a bit relieves that tedium a little bit.
But do you think he doesn't know how to structure that? Because I don't think he gives those stories the momentum he thinks he's giving them. I think he thinks that he's structuring it so they're all getting dramatic points at the same time and they're all coming to a climax at the same time. But he fudges that completely.
Yeah, they're both of them terribly written. It's just I think the Redux is a little less terrible than the other one.
Interesting.
And I think the sound effects are better in the redone one.
I don't know whether it's because I'm so familiar with the original version, but I was not at all thrilled by this new version. I mean, the part of what I didn't like was, Joe, what you've touched on, that the original you had 7, 5, and then 6 as an episode apiece, and then episode 4 was all of them coming together. Episode 4 in this version is largely untouched. It's been given a few little audio tweaks, which it badly needed, to be honest, particularly when they're in the Type 70 TARDIS and it was just dead air.
I mean, they were learning, right?
They were learning, and I'm prepared to forgive an awful lot from that very first release. It was very simplistic, the original release. Maybe it was a lack of experience, although by this point Nick Briggs has been doing it a long time with the AV stuff and with the Benny stuff. Maybe it was there to just gentle people into audio drama that had never picked one up before. But this one, I've always said that a good Doctor Who story needs 2 or 3 plot threads running through it at the same time, which are then all tied together. The problem with this is that those first 3 episodes were written as basically one-part stories. To stretch those out in bits over 3 episodes, my God, no, mate. All of a sudden, you've made a sort of quite a simplistic one-part story into a very dull, fragmented 3-part story, and you've given each episode, instead of 2 or 3 plot points, 8 or 9 plot points that you've got to keep. I mean, I know this story, and I was fucking confused by the end of part 3. But then you get into part 4, and I've never really noticed before, but Mark, it's something you said about how damn confusing the thing is, because you've got the Knights of Alicia, the Calphadorians, then the Sirens of Time. I'd never realised before, I don't actually know what goes on, or who the hell anybody is.
I mean, there's half an hour of exposition in that
There's
last
a lot of
episode.
Just explaining it all now at the end, isn't there?
It's
just
a lot
stands
of
there,
talk,
and
so we should know, but
we still
it's
don't.
So boring, you just switch off. Okay, we're doing a load of.
I mean, there are nice little fragments in it. Don't get me wrong. I like the time chart bit where they're going through time and all the different nexus points where time is diverged. I think that's a nice bit, but that is it's somehow reduced by doing what they've done to the rest of the story. They've minced the rest of the story.
Can I ask, did anyone get the special edition cassette and the laminated picture of Nick Briggs drinking champagne? Did anyone? Do we all just get the standard versions, or did we get
just the standard version?
I just downloaded it.
You're joking.
What
There's
is
a
the
laminated
point?
picture of Nick Briggs drinking champagne.
Photos of the cassette and stuff. I don't know who bought. They all sold out.
My God.
They didn't make many of them, but they sold out.
Is it laminated because he thinks it needs to be wiped clean for some reason?
I knew he was going to say
I just
that.
saw a picture. I don't know what it is.
Mark, what are your thoughts on this story?
There's just no point in this new version. I do like the structure of the original version. I like those 3 one-parters. I don't like the storyline, but I like how that's done. And maybe later on, Big Finish do those 4 one-parters.
Oh, the anthologies.
The anthologies. Yeah. Maybe they should have done something a bit more like that, where they were just some standalone stories that didn't have all this extra, Sirens of Time stuff. And it's not for me,
didn't we? We went looking for critique or anything on the Sirens of Time Redux, yeah? On Gallifrey Base, there is less than 17 posts, and most of them are, when is this coming out? No one's talking about it. So then I went looking on the usual review spots, even Blog to Who, in Big Finish's pocket, and getting free copies and a very nice review each time. Even they haven't written a review of this one. Like, it just seems to have been totally skipped by.
And to celebrate Big Finish, they did the live show, they did the stuff for Legend. I don't think we needed this story re-edited. It feels just like an extra vanity project for Nick Briggs a little bit.
Whose idea do you imagine this was?
Nobody was excited, and it didn't... Yeah, it wasn't a great start for Big Finish, but it didn't... What else can you do? He's not done... He's just pressed shuffle on the CD and added a bit of new music. It hasn't added anything else. We're not getting anything else out of it. I just don't see the point of it.
And the new music
is intrusive.
Bad.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. The music in the original, I think that was Briggs again, but it was much more atmospheric. The stuff that's set in the submarine, he's using instruments. Here he's using a synthesizer, and he's really stressing that sort of mid-80s synth incidental music, and it's just jarring. So it doesn't even sound nicer.
I mean, I can see what they've tried to do, and I quite like that approach. I think that it's a nice touch to try and emulate an era. They said that they've gone back to the original DAT tapes, but all they've done is taken the original DAT recordings of the full mix down and overlaid on top of that, which isn't the same thing.
And I suppose the only other thing with the special edition and reissuing it, you get all the extra interviews and behind the scenes stuff that wasn't on the CDs at the beginning, but we've had sort of overkill of that now. Who listens to the behind-the-scenes stuff on Big Finish?
Ken does.
Well, I was going to say this. I generally do, but because, both Simon and Joe are well aware of how close to recording I finish listening / reading / watching the thing that we're supposed to be reviewing. So I've not actually got to the 3rd bonus disc with all the millions of interviews and how great the Big Finish launches are, etc., wank, wank, wank.
That's basically it, Ken, though, right? Yeah, I'll just do it for you now, so you can play.
I'll do it. It's just when you hear that, I'm just like, that's for me. Time to fall
and it's
asleep.
basically somebody going, "Oh, we loved working with that actor, wasn't it lovely? Oh my God, we came in and Toby's lunch was superb. Oh my word." And anyway, we'd love to work with them again. That's basically it, but stretched out for an hour. That's so boring. Have you guys ever read Benjamin Cook's Inside Story, which is the behind the scenes full of gossip and scandal and all the behind the scenes nastiness that went on with the first 50 releases? Yeah, it's like, a proper gossip rag on Big Finish. That's what we want as the bonus disc. Tell us how Paul Cornell said to Nicholas Briggs, "Do you know what? I can't believe you're doing this first one. We need a special writer doing this, not you," which is apparently a true story. Nick Briggs tells it himself.
Well, isn't that in one of the Big Finish Talks backs, the writer's room? Isn't that story on there, or am I misremembering that?
No, he's on an interview on YouTube as well, which we watched earlier tonight, which has been done recently, literally recalling that story that Paul Cornell came up to him and said, "The first one needs a special writer," and I quote,
"Sweetheart, that ain't you, isn't
it? That ain't you, sweetheart." But you know what? It sticks in my craw to admit that Paul Cornell is right, because he's such an arrogant prick. But he was right.
And Nick Briggs has spent 25 years proving him right.
Yes, he has.
And also doing an improved version of this, isn't that him admitting that the first version wasn't that great in the first place?
Well, unsophisticated, maybe. That's what he's saying.
I would like to agree, were it not for the fact that I've been going back to polish up some of our early podcasts, which to my ears are absolutely shocking.
You've got time on your hands, haven't you? No, I know you don't.
If I could, I'd just podcast the whole time. I'd get up at 6 o'clock, I'd go to bed at midnight, and in between, I would just podcast. I don't need to tell you because you put out way more material than I even record. But I can get on board with going back and polishing up early work and celebrating. It's a bit of a vanity project, this one, but I can get on board with why they've done it and pat on the back. You've been running a long bloody time. And they've done a lot for Doctor Who. They kept the flame alive when no one else gave a toss. Even the BBC didn't really give a toss. And they really had to fight for the license. I think it was only because of the Benny audios. So, well, if we can't do Doctor Who, we'll do Benny. And then a year later said, look, we can do these. This is how good they are. Give us Doctor Who. Go on then if you want. And it's been, by any stretch of the imagination, a runaway success out of thin air. So I can forgive them for patting themselves on the back.
But how much of it has been a runaway success? Because there are a lot of fans who will buy anything that has Doctor Who written on it.
Well, what is it that you always say, Dr. Exton, that fans would buy?
You slap a Dalek on the cover, and automatically you've got 1,000 sales.
That's the thing. It didn't matter who wrote the first one or what the story was. Everyone was going to buy it straight away. This was always going to get the biggest sales. Everyone was always going to. So they might as well have left the better writers and the better stories a bit later on.
The question is, what was the sales for Phantasmagoria after they listened to this? That's what we want to know.
I think those early sales were pretty good because it was new Doctor Who.
Do you know what it is, right? Sorry, I'm going to go on a Nicholas Briggs rant now.
Oh, no.
It's like when they finally got Tom, right? We've got Tom Baker, the thing everybody wants more than anything. Yeah, they tried to lure him in with fantastic scripts in the past. Holy Terror, Stones of Venice. No, he didn't want to put any part of it. What did they give him?
Destination Nerva.
Destination fucking Nerva. The most tedious, god-awful script you've ever heard. A wank job to the Ark in space. Poor Tom Baker. And, you know...
But that wasn't even the first one.
It was.
Well, it was the first one released, but they recorded Energy of the Daleks first.
Oh, Energy of the Daleks. No. By Nicholas Briggs. They did it again. They did it again with Christopher Eccleston and the fucking Ravagers. And I'm like, stop getting Briggs to open up these ranges with these fresh Doctors because he's not a good writer. And I know tons of people that listen to Destination Nerva and the Ravagers and didn't buy any more Fourth Doctor or Christopher Eccleston audios because they were so bad. It's just baffling.
It's worse than the Buddha Castle one.
That's quite a good one in comparison, yeah.
Oh, God, no, that vampire with his strangly voice, I just could not take it seriously at all.
Maybe to celebrate the Sirens of Time, maybe instead of doing this four-parter that shuffled around a bit, maybe he could have gone full-on new series and cut it down to an hour and really made it completely different. I think maybe... he needed to go a bit further and really change it. It just feels like
colour approach. You mean
the War Games and colour approach? Maybe that's what it needed. Take out a lot of it, make it a bit more pacey.
Do you know what? That's actually
maybe that's because this was written, pre new series, and I think there was a bit of a change in the Big Finish when the new series came out in terms of they changed they did the 45-minute structure with some of the Eighth Doctor and things. Maybe that's what this needed. A bit more of a radical change.
I'll put this to the three of you then. Simon, I know you're slightly less familiar with the more recent BF stuff, but on the whole, and I'm going to say this from a position of love for Big Finish, I love what they've done, and I think that some of their more recent stuff, actually, there's a return to form, certainly in terms of writing quality, and, audio quality has always been very good, but the stories, some of the more recent stuff, I think is pretty good.
Really?
Can I just say very quickly... So do we. We love Big Finish. We have a shrine to Big Finish, which is a floor-to-ceiling bookcase full of practically every physical copy of it. We have a Big Finish podcast. So I know it sounds like we've come on here and dumped all over Big Finish as if we hate it. We love Big Finish, but Jesus Christ, right? Call a turd a turd.
Well, the one thing I was going to say was, the one thing they just cannot seem to get right is anniversaries. Zagreus was a lovely attempt to do something wildly different, and hats off to them. But they still fudged it. It didn't...
No, shove the hat down the throat. Zagreus was dreadful. absolutely god-awful.
It wasn't brilliant, but it was an attempt to do something different, but it didn't work.
Yeah, and they did something different. They managed to be even worse than anything they'd put out before. Zagreus was the reason that I stopped listening to Big Finish.
Really? Is that when you took out?
Yeah, it was beyond awful.
But what else have we had? I mean, have you guys done Legacy of Time?
We've heard it, but we haven't reviewed it.
Yeah, you've not reviewed it, but
I thought that wasn't too...
That was all right. That was towards the better end, I thought. But, I mean, what was Legacy of Time for?
What was that terrible one that Briggs wrote? Light at the End. Oh, my God. And the light at the end...
the light at the end, it's very, it's got echoes of Sirens of Time. All the Doctors, there's that red light or something, isn't it, on the console? They all just go through the same thing, and there's the same thing happening in each of their episodes.
But like the Sirens of Time, right? That's an enticing title, yeah. The Sirens of Time. What on earth's that going to be? The light at the end, it sounds like, the light at the end of the tunnel when you die. No, it was literally a light on the console. Like, oh my God, just get him away from the typewriter. He absolutely can do post-production. He can direct brilliantly. He can do great music.
Well, actually, also to celebrate Big Finish, maybe, if Nick Briggs was going to do something, repackage the first series of Dalek Empire and do something like that, maybe. That would be better than the Sirens of Time. Because that is brilliant.
I just say you can't write a script. That's pretty good.
No, because Dalek Empire is where he really is...
So I'm going to sing his praises as well here, because there's things like Embrace the Darkness, I think is wonderful. And I actually spoke to him about that in a lift years and years ago. And he was going through a terrible relationship split at that time. So that was all born of quite a lot of angst and upset. I thought Embrace the Darkness was really good.
Creatures of Beauty is a fantastic audio. And Creatures of Beauty, he does what he's trying to do here, which is he takes a story apart and puts it together in a really sort of interesting and unusual way. But he does it so successfully there, whereas he doesn't get it right here. Well, he tries to do the same thing with Ravagers. Ravagers is a non-linear story that jumps about all over.
Yeah.
With paradoxes and all sorts, but it just makes zero sense at all.
The very worst anniversary or celebration is got to be Once and Future. I had such high hopes for that. The whole idea of the degeneration, this has been doing the rounds for years. They're finally going to do it. And it's just 8 hours of trailer. Coda has landed on my doorstep a year after the end of it for some damn reason. And I've not even listened to it. I've just you've got 2 Doctors that I've never listened to. And I can't be arsed.
We knew we were in trouble with Once and Future when it opened with Sylvester McCoy doing, go on, do it. He's just screaming his head off. We're like, oh boy, we're in for a ride here.
What else can they do for a celebration? I mean, I hope we don't start getting more of these re-edited. There's so much Big Finish out there. We don't need newer versions.
I've got an idea
of things.
I do have an idea for a celebration story, yeah? Just tell a good story. Just tell a normal Doctor Who story that hits all the right beats with great characters in it. Who were the characters in the Sirens of Time, right? Helena, Elenia, and all of that. That's a fake character, so that is completely discounted. In one, you've got a couple of Nazis who get 2 scenes, who we don't really invest in at all. In another, we get Ruthly, which is this warthog character that gets murdered, and the Knight of Valicia, who we don't really get to know at all. So if you're into Doctor Who's characters like me, who have you got to cling on to here? Just the Doctors? Ain't enough.
The pseudo-companion, who is obviously going to be some kind of alien thing, because clearly the same person in all 3 of them, then becomes this Knight of Valicia, who's actually one of the Sirens of Time. And it's sort of pretty much every scene she reinvents herself. And then you get that terrible bit where she's suddenly about faces and I want you to go and erase everything. And they believe her when she has done nothing but lie to their face every single time. And then, what a surprise, she's lying.
And then the whole thing's sort of undone at the end. There's like a massive reset at the end. Everyone goes back to where they were. The submarine goes back. Elenia goes back. All of that. So I was like, well, what was the point of this?
Well, not quite, because the very final scene is the 3 Doctors listening to somebody drown and letting her drown.
Just walking away from it. There's a mission statement for you.
Which, whatever plot went beforehand, is a horrible thing to leave a story on.
There are judicious edits I noticed in this.
There was some, yeah.
Not enough.
Well, there were a couple of scenes that either were missing or I just didn't notice where they'd been put. Sancroft calling Ruthley a bitch had been edited out.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Which I didn't like. I can see why they've sanitized Big Finish a little bit for sort of radio transmission, and I suspect Cardiff are keeping a slightly closer eye on what's going in there.
Wasn't there a line about Ruthley wiping his arse as well?
Yes. Yeah, that had gone. And again, don't sanitize these things. It's a big old universe. Some of it's going to not be very pleasant.
Yeah, that's not that strong, is it?
But again...
Are we mocking carers now?
Are Big Finish pandering to Cardiff or are Cardiff whipping Big Finish? I suspect there's a little bit of both, but I don't like trims.
No. Again, there are some trims that should have been made, which was all the dialogue in this. And they could have just had the music and the sound effects. And what was that line about the cheese grater?
Something about a cheese grater.
Flying for a cheese grater.
That was
Asmund, I trust you to fly me naked for a cheese grater because I'm Mark Gatiss.
Jesus Christ.
That was still in there.
Yeah, I know. I would have taken that one out.
I feel like I haven't really heard the audio visuals, but I don't know. I've only heard clips of them, but it's got that vibe to it somehow. That sort of fan script. I don't know, just the way the dialogue is.
The production values are a big step up from the audio visuals.
Yes, yeah. But just in terms of the character, the dialogue, it's like this feels like these are the characters that are a bit like, Sword of Orion type of dialogue. I don't know. There's something about the Nick Briggs dialogue that.
Well, I suppose that's how he came up the rank, isn't it?
So, I don't know.
Well, fan wanky.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something about it that you just tell.
But also as well, I prefer the simplicity of the original production. The sound effects are more subtle. The music is far more subtle. The music's just slapped all over this now, like they do with all of their releases now. When they realised they could do orchestral scores and things like that, they just went to town with it and sort of all ambience vanished and it just became bombast. I know you said about the sound effects, and I could hear improved sound effects. But when it's the same script, when I'm not following what's happening, when the music is overbearing on everything, it was just unpleasant to listen to, I think.
It's certainly not, for me, an improvement on the original. Because the audio quality was pretty good in the original. It didn't really need this. It was just even a sequel. We've had a sequel to The Sirens of Time, The Legacy of Time, and it didn't need that either.
I'll tell you what they could have done. They could have gone back to absolute classic Doctor Who and done it in a style that has always reunited fans and made it a missing episode.
Oh, Dr. Exton.
That's an inspired idea. And we could just tell it through, what's the oral equivalent of telesnaps,
White noise.
That's basically what this is, Simon,
There are two things that it reminded me of. The fan wankiness of the storylines reminded me of the kind of shite that people used to talk about at the end of Doctor Who fan groups when everybody was leathered and just coming out. Wouldn't it be great if we had Gallifrey, but it was time users that were even more powerful and could suck all the energy out of the Time Lords, but even they're not the most powerful thing around. But the most powerful thing around is in a box until the Doctor shoots it. It was just that level of crap.
Ancient Order of the Knights of Valicia. Get me another point. I'm on to something here,
Yeah. And the other thing that it reminded me of, do you know the Michael Moorcock Eternal Champions books?
After coming to the Terror Files, I just avoided Michael Moorcock.
He wrote quite a good trilogy and recognised it was quite a good trilogy, so rewrote the same thing in different settings with different characters for pretty much the rest of his career. And he even admitted that's what he was doing by calling it the Eternal Champion, and that it was the same story over and over and over again. And that's what those first three stories were like, particularly when they were episodic. They were so samey.
Would I be correct in assuming that in terms of creative writing, there is a cavernous gulf between Michael Moorcock and Nicholas Briggs?
You would.
Coming of the Terror Files, though.
Yeah, it was awful. Yeah. I couldn't understand a word of it. Those sentences were like 3 paragraphs long.
It's one of the few books I've put down, and there aren't many.
Yeah, but he'd done all his weird 1970s Jerry Cornelius stuff by then, so... Oh, there's a terrible, terrible, almost unwatchable film. The Final Solution, something like that. I watched some weird films, and that was unwatchable.
The Final Solution, coming soon from Nicholas Briggs.
Is it a matter of time before we get the 3 Nicholas Briggs or the 5 Nicholas Briggs or the 2 Nicholas?
Isn't that pretty much every release they did?
Instead of this, again, I should be in their meetings with coming up with all these ideas. They could have done the Sirens of Time, but 3 new series Doctors record it.
Oh,
that would have been fun.
Oh my God.
Gimmick. No?
That would have been great. Yeah, well, it would have been more fun. At least it would be something original.
Or they could have done it as an 8 episode with 6 Doctors.
No, we don't need twice.
That would have been Valium.
Sirens of Time special edition reuniting Christopher Eccleston, Jodie Whittaker,
and David Tennant.
The first time together.
We'll avoid all the Moffat Doctors.
There's no reason for it, but we'll do it anyway.
Dear God. Sirens of Time reimagines rather than Redux. Yeah. No. Let's not make it longer. We're supposed to be making this shorter, remember?
I've always said with Big Finish, fans will buy anything that they put out with Doctor Who slap on it, so they have no impetus to improve.
I agree with that.
Sarah Sutton gargling the phone book, people would buy. Colin Baker taking a 3-hour dump, people would buy. So if Cardiff were to turn around and say, you know what, 3 releases a month, and you pick the best ones, they would actually have an incentive to do a degree of quality control.
I've only got one question to ask you about that, though. Do you really think it takes Colin Baker 3 hours to have a dump?
I work on a care of the elderly ward. I deal with people who can take a week.
That's why he's so prepared with his scripts. He reads them on the bog.
God bless the man. There were 2 points that I had. One, it's a very Big Finish thing that every episode is topped and tailed with a different version of the theme. We've got an anniversary special. We'll top and tail it with a different... I did not want this. If anything, I wanted the McCoy theme.
I was complaining about this all the way through.
It doesn't even make sense, does it?
No, it doesn't. Davison, Baker, McCoy, Baker, Davison. What's going on, Big Finish? This is not a celebration.
A bit like how he structured those plots. It just don't make no sense at all, does it?
So that did get on my tits. But the only thing, I've never noticed this. I've only realised that the description is entirely in my head. What does a temperon look like? To me, it has always looked like a huge scabies mite, but there's no descriptor for this thing at all. It's the only thing in the whole play.
Yeah, but intimate experience with scabies then, to know that.
I don't know why that in 1999, the first thing that popped into my head for a time-travelling being was a scabies mite that was, 30 feet long.
No, well, it's sort of amorphous blob because it's sort of sounds like blood.
Oh, yeah, I was thinking like a space whale type thing.
Oh, whale.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all see something completely different.
Dr. Exton, do you care?
No, I don't really care. I'll tell you what the Sirens of Time sound like.
Go on.
Cryons. I could not take that voice seriously because I was just seeing all that rainbow frill and the big googly eyes.
You've got cryons on the brain. To me, they were Gelf. That's the Gelf voice.
Yeah. What's the Gelf?
The gas creatures from Christopher Eccleston.
Oh, sorry. I was thinking about Red Dwarf. Gelf, that.
Oh, no, Gelf. Yeah.
Mostly, if I see a blob, I usually see that Camille creature from Red Dwarf episode Camille, with the...
Yes, I do. Let's rate this in earworms.
This is the song that never ends. Yes, it goes on and on, my friends.
Boys, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good do we think Sirens of Time Redux is? Mark, I'll start with you.
I'll be kind. I'll say 3.
Fucking hell, kind.
I'd like to thank the Sirens of Time Redux because it's allowed me to reappraise the Sirens of Time, the original story, which I would have rated a 1, but now I'll sort of beef it up to a 2, and because I really think this is the inferior version of the same story, I would give this a 1 out of 10 and just say I cannot imagine a more inept way of kickstarting the main range than this.
It's just that I don't really go back to that first version. So I'm not going to want to go back to this second version. It's not one that you think, oh, I'm going to listen to the Sirens of Time tonight. That's going to cheer me up.
Like, who thinks that? Who is this for? Who thinks I need a new version of the Sirens of Time?
I have to agree with you on that. I mean, I might have lambasted you there, Mark, but it's a 3 from me as well. I did not really enjoy this new version of Sirens of Time. I really enjoyed the original version. It's a 7 or 8 for the original version, purely because of the love I have for the thing and how it kick-started a huge love affair with Big Finish. But this version doesn't need to be here. It's actually made it worse.
It's so sad though, Ken, because we could have come together, right? Because I know you, like us, love those first 50 main range releases. We could have come together and talked about pretty much any other story apart from the Sirens of Time, and it would have been an enormous wank job to Big Finish because we love that stuff.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, not this.
Well, that's easy. Pick one and come back on the podcast.
Now you're talking, bang, bang, a boom.
No.
Oh, God,
No.
the pits of anger.
No.
Don't start.
Sorry.
Oh, Dr. Exton, how many out of 10 are you giving this?
Well, as always, I'm going to compare this with professionally produced audio drama that we listen to.
Oh, they are professionals. It's just you don't like the writing.
As I say, I am comparing this to professionally produced radio drama.
It's kicking off.
Because there is an argument that they are professionals, so should be compared to things like Cabin Pressure. And with that comparison, 3.
It's a resounding thumbs down for the Sirens of Time Redux. Sorry, Big Finish, not a win.
I actually thought Sirens of Time Redux was better than the original. The original I would give 2.
But, if our review has got you interested, listener, in getting the special editions, unfortunately, they are all sold out. I think they only made 2,250 of the bronze, the gold, the whatever versions. So unfortunately, they have all been snapped up.
Although a small plea to anybody that has bought that, if anyone is thinking of putting on eBay the laminated picture of Nicholas Briggs and his champagne bottle, please contact me. I'd like a copy. Thank you very much.
Why does your dartboard need something?
It's time for our podcast of the week. And since we have guests, Joe and Mark, what are you going to recommend? Have you got something for us? Another podcast?
Well, there's one that I've started listening to recently that I discovered called A Podcast of Spurious Morality. So that's a Doctor Who podcast, and it covers all sorts of topics. They do the classic TV series, seasons, but also a lot of Big Finish reviews. And yeah, I really like their Big Finish topics that they talk about. So yeah, give that a go.
And I would like to recommend What's in the Box with host Jim Allenby. Jim came on my podcast. That's how we got a bit of a taste for it back in the day. And then decided, because I didn't have him back enough, that he was going to start his own. And he's developed a really charming, lovely podcast where he invites people to, and there is some sort of audio stuff in there as well, to talk about their 5 sort of favourite Doctor Who things. And so it covers books, TV series, audios, memorabilia, sometimes memories, exhibitions, whatever. So it's sort of unique to the person that he's interviewing on that particular episode. But the MVP of it is just Jim himself. He is the most amiable bloke and just has a way of getting people to talk about their past and their love for Doctor Who in a really charming way. So yeah, I would recommend that to anybody who likes sort of looking at the whole wealth of Doctor Who merchandise that's out there in a really sort of friendly atmosphere.
What's in the box?
That's it for this time. Thank you very much, Mark and Joe, for coming on. Could you tell the boys and girls at home where we can listen to you in other podcasts?
Yeah, we do like Big Finish, really.
Yeah, we do.
You may not think we do, but we do. We do have our own podcast, which is on YouTube and any reputable podcast catchers, and that is called...
It is called Finish Big.
Jesus Christ.
I've got to undo the Big Finish and do it the other way around. I know, but
what is wrong with you?
It always takes you a minute.
Where we are on a journey to experience the entire
in order
range of Big Finish, and trust me, it's in order. He's there on that website looking at the dates very specifically, covering every spin-off, every main range story, every bit of tat that they've put out. And I'd say by and large, we have wonderful fun with it.
Anywhere else?
Oh boy, yeah, there's other things, isn't there?
Oh, and then I have a podcast called To Watch Who, where I have been watching through in order Doctor Who right from the very beginning, from the classic series with my friend Sarah, who has never seen Doctor Who before and isn't particularly interested. Well, I think she's interested now. We have done the classic series and we're in the middle of the 90s at the moment, and we shall soon be starting the new series, New Who. So, yeah, that's To Watch Who.
I also do. How long have your listeners got? A podcast called Answer with a Blunt Penknife, which is Doctor Who commentaries. It's steadfastly approaching its 900th episode in 4 years. That's quite a lot of stuff. But it's commentaries on Doctor Who stories, and it's branched out into a competition series called Strictly Come Hamster, and Doctor Who book reviews as well, which Ken does fabulous readings for. Thank you very much, Ken.
My pleasure.
And Untitled Star Trek Project, which is commentaries on Star Trek episodes. And is there anything else I'm forgetting?
Yeah, the Film Club.
Oh, the Film Club for Hamster Patreon. I mean, I never fucking shut up. But there's a lot of stuff out there.
And Desert Planet Pigs.
Oh, and Desert Planet Pigs. Although that's for strangers in space, But both of your good selves have come on and gone up in a space shuttle with me, haven't you? At one point or another.
And had a whale of a time doing it. Mark, Joe, it's been our pleasure. Thank you so much for coming to the archive.
Thank you, boys.
Thank you.
We'll pay for Briggs's therapy, all right?
Dr. Exton, where are we going next time?
Well, before I say that, we've got a little announcement, haven't we? Seeing as we're talking about Big Finish, because up until now, we've been doing Big Finishes that we cherry pick. So we've either been doing really bad ones or really good ones. And we're going to introduce a randomizer.
Oh, is that all spin-offs and everything, or just Doctor Who?
Main range.
Okay. I mean, that's still 270 odd to choose from, isn't it, there?
Yeah. I bet Ken had forgotten we were going to announce that. But where we're going next time on the Archive of Audio Antiquities is a fantastic little radio sitcom from 2006 called Tomorrow Today. And it is set in the early 1960s in the production office of a radio sci-fi series with two lead actors who hate each other and are very bitchy about it. One of them is played fantastically by Peter Bowles. There's also John Glover in there and an absolutely incredible guest appearance from Leslie Phillips. It is a really entertaining little sitcom.
We've just done the Leslie Phillips Big Finish when he played Dr. Knox, and he was camp and wonderful, so I can only imagine he was great in this. He's got such a voice for audio, hasn't he?
Well, you know, when they did the second one, Assassin in the Moonlight or Limelight or whatever it was, they were planning to have him as a sort of semi-regular pop-up, but it took so long to record his lines for that. They were still recording at something like 11 o'clock at night because he just took so long. So they decided halfway through to write him out.
Shame, because he is great. Like, honestly, Colin Baker and Leslie Phillips, there's only so much ham you can get in a studio, right?
On that note, boys and girls, thank you very much for listening. Thank you, Mark and Joe, for joining us. We shall be back next time with more audio goodness. Ta-ta.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
The Archive of Audio Antiquities featured Simon Exton and Ken Moss, and the announcer was Jenny at Blue Box 99. All featured soundtracks are the property of their respective producers, and no infringement of copyright is intended. Title music was by Edward White, and the programme was produced by Maverick Productions. For more information, please visit maverickproductionsuk.blogspot.com or find us on social media.